Hello and welcome to Heartistry. This is Farah, and I am thrilled. I have a very special guest today, somebody I've not yet had the chance to meet in person, but we were connected by somebody I think we both really have a lot of affection for. And I'm so grateful for this introduction and to share this conversation with all of you. So, let me tell you a little bit about today's guest. Today, we welcome Jingqiu Guan. Jingqiu is a filmmaker, choreographer, dancer, and scholar from Chengdu, China, and also an assistant professor of the practice of dance at Duke University. Working across performance, dance film, and documentary, Qingqiu creates interdisciplinary projects exploring cultural memory, identity, belonging, motherhood, and racial and disability justice. Her award winning films have been screened internationally, and her feature documentary titled Mama Dancers is distributed on Amazon. Jingqiu's 2025 TEDx Duke Talk examined how dance can help build a more caring and compassionate world. We're certainly going to hear more about all of this, but without further ado, please join me in welcoming Jingqiu to Heartistry. And we welcome to the podcast Jingqiu Quan. Nice to have you here. And I want to repronounce that. I said Quan, I meant to say Guan with more of a G sound. But it's lovely to have you here. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. Such a pleasure.
Uh, I mentioned in your introduction, I sort of want to qualify how we even got connected because I just think it's the beauty of the world and the ways we don't expect to intersect with people. But I have had the great pleasure of being involved with an organization that's based in Montana. Officially, the name of the organization is the Rocky Mountain Ballet Theater, and one of their signature programs is called Ballet Beyond Borders. And I've been getting to know them since 2019, working with them more directly since 2021, and an amazing young dancer at that time. Got to really witness her brilliance over the years, Amare. And Amare is at the dance program at Duke University, where you teach, and felt that there was a good reason for us to be in touch. And I'm just so glad she felt that way because that's how I got introduced to you.
Yeah, it's like really amazing to always think about how the world works in all
Exactly.
the synchronicity. Yeah, I met Amari when I first got to Duke
Okay.
for the professorship in the dance program, and that was also Amari's first year
There
at
you
Duke.
go.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
she was in the first piece I choreographed um,
Okay.
for Duke Dance Program, which is a piece about remembering the Angel Island immigration
Okay.
station and the history behind it. And so she was dancing in the piece and also shared her family memory,
Yeah.
especially her grandparents, fleeing the war in Germany at the
Yeah.
time. And
Yeah.
then she was in my other work, which is still ongoing work, on the history of trains and railroads.
There you go.
Yeah, but
Well,
she
we will
connected us.
we'll certainly touch on that because I think that's where she felt the intersection would be
Mhm.
especially poignant for you and I. But before we go into all of these amazing projects and the work you're doing, what I love to do is hear from my guests a little bit about your origin story,
Mhm.
where you were born, brought up, anything about your personal family history that you'd like to share with us. We'll eventually get to the present, but yes, anything in that realm.
Of course. So I was born and raised in Chengdu, China. I always love saying I'm from Chengdu because I see it as one of the best cities in China with the
Ah,
best food, and pandas also live there. Yeah, so I
amazing.
grew up um, in a quite strict family, I feel, and
Mm,
also just like the schooling in China, it's pretty strict. I remember sometimes looking back, I said, "Wow, is that how I spent my like 6 years of middle school, high school?"
huh.
So I was in boarding school since I was 12 years old, and it was like almost bare minimum schedule, like waking up on clock.
Yeah.
6:20, going to bed at 10, 10:30, and then almost classes all day long.
Wow.
And
A
then
very structured day and
extremely structured. Yeah. And then towards the end of my high school, I really wanted to study abroad in the United States. And of course, it's super expensive for any Chinese family, middle class Chinese family to afford. So I remember signing a contract with my parents saying if I get in a university in the US with a full ride scholarship, then I will come. If not, I will stay in China for college. And then luckily, I got a full ride scholarship from St. Mary's College in Notre Dame, Indiana. And it's a all-women
okay.
Catholic college. And
Yeah.
I ended up coming to the United States. And
Amazing.
yeah.
Some of what you even shared in some preliminary questions I asked you before today, you talked about, and you just sort of alluded to it too, just thinking about reflecting on your childhood. But you even shared that, when people would ask you sort of what you wanted to do when you got older,
Mhm.
you were referencing careers that were seen as more prestigious, respectable, if you will, in your society, and how you finally had a real pivotal moment that almost seemed to come in a spontaneous way, where I think there was an American friend living in China, and the mother asked you that very question, and without even thinking, do you remember what your response was?
Yes, I
What did
wanted
you
to be an
say?
artist. That was such a
Exactly.
pivotal moment. I think I was a teenager at the time. And, growing up, family, of course, would ask you, what do you want to be? The teachers would
Yeah.
ask you. I would always answer in terms of a career that people would respect. I would say, oh, I want to be a diplomat. I want to be a translator. But
Yeah.
then in my heart, I want to make art. I want to dance. I want to create. And I had this American friend who lived in China. She is a few years younger, and then she invited me over to her family's home.
Mm,
And her mom asked me, what do you want to do? And I said, I want to be an artist. And that's my first time answer
yeah.
in that way. Took me
Well,
by surprise.
and when you said artist, what was your inclination, or even where did your curiosity lie? What were you thinking when you said artist? What type of art at that time?
I don't think I even was clear exactly what type of
Okay.
artist. I just knew I want to create. I want
Yeah.
to be someone who make things, who create things, who imagines a world through art, whatever form it is. I
Yeah.
love dancing. I also studied Chinese calligraphy growing up. I love
Mm,
drawing. I study music too. So I feel um, any artistic endeavors would bring
yeah.
me so much joy and bring me close to my heart. Yeah, so that
Well,
moment was beautiful. Yeah.
yeah. And I have to say, the thing that's standing out to me most is what you were saying you would tell other people, by default saying you wanted to be a diplomat, a translator. But ironically, I mean, from my perspective, you are those things. You're just doing it through art,
That's so true. I was thinking
right?
about it too.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like just in a different way because art is a
Yeah,
form of translation. It's a form of building relationship, bringing the world
totally.
together.
Yep, you are.
Courageous.
I really believe as artists, we are, and especially when we are drawing on whether it is stylistically and or stories of our cultural heritage, we are absolutely cultural ambassadors. AKA diplomats.
So
So
true.
look at that. You weren't lying.
It,
and and so you knew you wanted to create. I'm curious to know, growing up in China, did you have were you taking arts classes? Were you being trained or experiencing in any particular artistic medium?
Yeah, so I grew up dancing
Okay.
since I was 3, 4 years old in kindergarten. I was
Okay.
asked, demanded to be in a dance class and in a performance. At the time, I
Okay.
really resisted. I didn't want to do it, but then after a few practices, I absolutely loved it.
Yeah.
And ended up my first performance. I was chosen to be the leading performer in that piece, and I was really little. And then since then, I just never stopped dancing, taking classes. The
Okay.
irony is, my father, he always wanted to be a dancer, but
Ah,
because of the time period he was born and raised, and also being born in a rather poor family in the countryside, he didn't have the opportunity to pursue it.
okay.
So but the whole time when I wanted to pursue dance, since I came to the United States for college, realizing that's actually the path I want to pursue, my family were very resistant about it,
Including your father.
including my father. And
Hmm.
in 2018, after my first child was born, almost a year afterwards, I went back to China and I
Hmm.
made a film called Family Portrait. And it's a film kind of tracing back my lineage, the influences and values installed in me from my family, my grandmother, my parents, and then my child, right? This whole lineage
Yeah.
one taught
Yeah.
me different things. So
Yeah.
in the making of that film, I asked my father if we can dance together. And that was the first time we danced together because in
Mm.
China, growing up, you have like kids and parents, you have this respectful distance. And physically, you're not really that close. You don't hug
Sure.
each other, you don't kiss each other. Just how my generation is growing up, I think now it's changing a bit. There's
Okay.
more physical intimacy between parents and children. But when I was growing up, I don't remember hugging my parents. I don't remember kissing my parents. All right, so dancing
Wow.
together, wrapped in a red thread, that was very like beautifully intimate in a way, and I felt opened up conversation between us. And I
Mm.
asked her also after dancing, I conducted an interview with him, and then my father opened up to me about his childhood, how he wanted to pursue
Wow.
dance, and how he really wanted me to be happy and pursue what I want, but he was really worried about a career as a dancer, how
Mm.
it took so long to prepare you for a stage performance, but then also dancer's career is so short, right? And I think now it's changing. I feel we are
Yes.
seeing dancers
Yes.
dancing much longer, and also depends on what considered as dance, right? The whole notion and definition expands. But for my in my father's view at the time, right, it's probably more narrowly defined what dance is and who can dance, how long can one dance. So it's
Yeah.
this deep love and also the responsibility he wants to instill in me that prevented him from allowing me to just be free to choose whatever I wanted. Yeah.
Mm.
But then, like, I think sometimes looking back, thinking about those resistance and struggle, it actually made me more resilient and more clear about
Right.
I had to stick to where my heart is guiding me. Yeah. So that's
Yeah.
become something I always make sure I follow. Yeah.
Ah, I love all of this. Let's go ahead. We'll take our first pause right here.
Perfect.
Welcome back to Heartistry. This is Farah Yasmeen Shaikh. And today I'm having a really, we're only like 10, 15 minutes into this conversation, and I'm just feeling so just emotionally moved and inspired by so much of what you're saying. And that is with our guest today, Jingqiu Guan. And you mentioned you got a full scholarship to attend St. Mary's, Notre Dame in Indiana. And what did you, when you were going to school there, what did you go in with the intention to study? Was it dance or?
No, it wasn't dance.
Yeah, tell me
Yeah,
about
because
that.
at that time I never even thought about pursuing dance as a possibility to be a career, right?
Yeah.
And also, I think in China, growing up, who can be a dancer, right? Normally, it's the children who got into professional school very early on, right? So I was
Uh,
in more like an amateur program, right? Taking classes throughout, but
yeah.
not in this intensive all day, all year
Yes.
round type
They
of.
were in those like priming programs to really be on that track.
Absolutely. So
Yeah.
I even like didn't believe I could go
Yeah.
on this path, right? But I think being in college, we didn't have a dance major. In St. Mary's, there was a dance minor, and also there was a dance ensemble where you
Okay.
audition to be in the ensemble and
Yeah.
perform in the concerts, and then there are all kinds of dance classes being offered. So that was my first time taking like ballet, jazz, modern, because prior to that, my training was in Chinese classical dance, in Chinese folk dance form.
Yeah.
And I remember I felt so, there's so many people I felt so grateful for when I was in college, like the community there, right? There was a librarian at the school, Julie Long, and then there was um, dance studio teacher who has her own dance studio. Her name is Lydia, and they would drive me to
Oh,
dance
wow.
studios to take extra classes because they know how much I love it. And then
Uh,
Lydia would allow me to, clean the studio, help clean the studio to exchange
to,
for a free class, right?
wow.
So I felt there was so much support of people knowing this is what I wanted to do, and they helped me to get more trainings that I wanted. And there, yes, I felt that moment
Mm,
being exposed to a different dance form expanded my understanding of what dance could be
yeah.
and expanded my creative vision about what I could do through dance. So I think that kind of inspired me to, oh, maybe there I could, right? Maybe I
Yeah.
can use dance as something, not just creating something beautiful on stage, storytelling,
Yeah.
but actually making an impact. Yeah.
And so, as you were taking these classes, at what point did you start to realize that this was really going to be a bigger part of your life?
Very quickly, I
Yeah.
felt, I think in my freshman year, yeah, first year there, I already had
Okay.
this feeling. Yeah, but I majored in economics and French.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
so just keep dancing. And I remember going to take the train to New York City in the
Mm,
winter break or summer break to do dance intensive in different companies.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so that just the beginning of a journey. Yeah. And I didn't
Amazing.
know. I didn't at the time I really didn't know how I could make it happen because in my vision, right, still I felt, oh, maybe I'm not technically strong enough because I didn't have these intensive
Yeah.
training every day growing up in a professional academy setting, right? So lots of doubts in working with
Right. I mean, and now, of course, we name that as imposter syndrome, right? Like, even though you probably felt you were obtaining the skills and all of that, you're still comparing yourself to those that were on these very kind of focused tracks
Mhm.
that you had not been a part of. And yet you were obtaining and advancing in all of this. And so you finished up at Notre Dame, and what came next?
And then I was applying for grad school. I wanted to go to the University of Iowa for my MFA.
Okay.
I got into that program, but at the same time, because I wasn't sure if I would get into a dance program, so I applied
Right.
for a bunch of all kinds of other programs closer to the
Okay.
diplomat track, right? So I applied for international education policy in different programs. So I got into, I think at the time I got into all the grad schools, including Harvard Graduate School of Education.
Okay.
And at that time, my parents said, okay, you have to go to Harvard and you cannot go dancing otherwise.
Okay.
So I
So you
couldn't.
were at Harvard, was it an MFA program?
That was EDM, so Master of
Okay.
Education,
Okay.
in International Education Policy. So
Got it.
ended up doing that program.
Okay.
And while I was there, I was dancing and taking classes at Harvard Dance Center.
Yeah.
Jill Johnson, who used to be with William Forsythe, was the director of the dance center at the time, and she was choreographing. So I was able to be in her piece and then
Mm,
keep taking classes in Boston, in Cambridge. And then while I was there, I secretly applied for the program at the University of Iowa again. And
okay.
and then I didn't tell my parents, and I
Yeah.
felt so grateful for the professors there who decided to take me on again with a full
Wow.
fellowship. So once I got in the second time, I told my parents afterwards, and
How did that go?
they said, I knew you would apply for it again. I was surprised. They were not surprised that I did
Yeah,
it.
and were they on board?
They were on board the second
There
time.
you
Yeah.
go. Well, and I think that you were finding this really amazing way because God, I think it would be really easy to understate what was, the demands of being at that program at Harvard and all of that, applying again, all of these things, but they were really seeing you follow through in every area clearly. And so at that point, I mean, it's like, I don't know. I just think about if I saw my daughter going through all of that and being really committed and disciplined in their work ethic around all of these different phases, I would feel like, how can I not support this?
Mhm.
Clearly, these are the life lessons you want your child to learn, even outside of the subject or even the career path. It's you had
Mhm.
nailed all these other areas. So I love it. So you go to Iowa.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so when I was there, it was like being in a paradise. I felt just dancing all
Mm.
day long, studios. I was just so hungry for it. And then there's another very important turning point transition, right? Or turning point in how my career in dance is being defined. That was in the middle of the year one, year two. So in the summer, I came to American Dance Festival for this
At Duke. Yes.
6 week
Yes.
intensive. And it was really like a few years a few years ago, right, when I got this position at Duke, it was such a full circle moment because that
Yeah.
marks 10 years since I went to ADF. And I
Wow.
never thought I would never imagine I would be here, at the
Yeah.
time. So I was doing the ADF intensive. I was casted to be in a Martha Graham piece staged by Dwayne Cyrus, who
Okay.
became still like a really close mentor and friend.
Mm.
And that was like a very transformative dance experience. But beside that, I saw my first dance film, like screen dance. I
Mm.
saw one of the dancers putting a camera on a suitcase to film another dancer. And I was like, oh my God, that's so interesting because you're not just filming the movement, you're also filming the movement through something that's already moving, right? So that created this
Oh,
double
oh,
impact
so it was
motion.
on rollers.
Exactly. And
Okay.
oh, that's so creative. You can do that.
Yeah.
You can use a suitcase in this way. So that just opened a whole Pandora box for me of
Yeah.
imagination and creativity. So second year at Iowa, right? I came back from ADF. All I wanted to do is making dance film. So I had a very small camera. I didn't know how to edit, right? So I had a friend, Barbara Namar, who is a very incredibly talented artist, interdisciplinary artist, who is now based in Chicago. So he was in the MFA program in intermedia at the time. So we collaborated. And
Okay.
he, in a way, taught me how to edit, and then made a bunch of dance film in that year. And I just realized, wow, this is actually what I want to do.
Yeah.
So putting dance on screen opened up so many possibilities for choreography, right? So I'm no
Mm.
longer being content within one linear time and space. I can jump between time,
Yeah.
space, just with a cut,
Yes.
right? And then
Yes.
so just so much storytelling
Ah.
potential. And I feel somehow I resonate with this way of thinking in choreographing even more naturally for my
Oh,
brain,
interesting.
for
Yeah.
my creativity than a stage choreography. So I just started devote to making works on screen for a
Ah.
while, and then later on, when I went to UCLA for my doctorate study, I just continued that journey and keep expanding knowledge, tools, and skills in filmmaking and genres
Yeah.
of works. Yeah, so that took me
Wow.
a whole new journey. Yeah.
Amazing. Let's go ahead. We'll take a second pause here.
Mhm. Awesome.
Welcome back to Heartistry. This is Farah, and today we are speaking with Ching. Oh my goodness, I want to make sure I say it right. You say your name. You say it so beautifully.
It's Jingqiu Guan.
Jingqiu Guan.
Perfect.
Yes, there's like that subtlety in the CH sound
Hmm.
that we have in Urdu and Hindi, but I still
Yeah.
want to make sure. But so, I mean, one, the word that's coming to my mind is impressed, but somehow it's not really what I want to convey. Yes, I am impressed, but I think it's really something quite amazing, just the number of universities that you have engaged with, because even just here in the States, and this is not even there for me naming where you started your higher education in China, right? But what unique experiences as you're moving around. You start Notre Dame, Harvard, Iowa. You mentioned then you went to UCLA.
That's right.
Now here you are teaching at Duke. I mean, there might even be some more in between there and or yet
That's
to come, right?
it.
But it's you know, it's interesting. So, a little bit of brief history, even for myself. So, I grew up dancing from the age of 5 to 18, based on where I grew up. My parents were immigrants from Pakistan. And to be honest, dance was not something that was part of their,
Mm.
day to day existence. The society was more conservative, if you will, than India once partition happened. And it just, you didn't have access as much in Pakistan. So dance arts, my parents really loved music, especially my father, music and poetry. But when they came, my sister and I were very close in age, just less than 2 years apart. And, my brother ended up getting into sports. And for my sister and I, my mom enrolled us in dance. And only now I can look back on that and say, wow, that was a very unique thing considering, her cultural background and all of that to say, okay, I want my daughters to do this. And it wasn't at all tied to our cultural history or heritage. It was jazz, it was ballet, we were baton twirlers. So very different for, again, especially people who looked like us. And then when I went away to college, I grew up born and raised in California in a small town by the name of Salinas. And then I moved to San Francisco to attend San Francisco State University. And that's actually where I, as much music as I'd been exposed to, both through live performance and just playing in the home, I had very little exposure to South Asian dance. But what was listed as an opportunity to take a class, it was listed as classical dance of India, I think maybe even of North India. And I just thought, well, you know, I look the part, it's part of my cultural heritage. Let's try it. Not at all thinking it would be something that stuck. And I did it. And that was quite literally in January of this year. It was 30 days, excuse me, 30 years since
Wow.
that day I stepped into that first class. And I was lucky enough that the man I eventually called Guruji was the person teaching that 2 unit course. Started, of course, training with them outside of that setting. But it's just, the way a university can really shape you again, even in the ways you don't expect. But it's also I happen to I was very much, I loved the dance. I had been dancing, but for me I had a little bit of clarity around I knew that this dance form was one I wanted to go very deep in. And so I felt that they only had a dance minor. I felt that if I minored in dance, it would pull me into other things that I'm sure would have been beneficial, but I was really seeking to find as much time and discipline in this form. And so I just chose to follow that path. And I did women's studies as what I studied as my undergraduate. Anyway, I say all of that I'm just, when we think of academia and all of this, of course there are strong dance programs, but I'm also curious to know, and I do want to hear more about your UCLA experience as you're going from one university to the other, and even environmentally in the cities you were in. What were some of the things that if you had to look back and say, yeah, now that I think about it, in Indiana, it was this taking the dance classes at Harvard and, dancing in studios in Cambridge. This, anything to reflect on there that you think you may not have been so aware of then, but maybe more so
Mhm.
now?
Yeah, that's such a great question. I think any dance environment, of course, has its own microculture, right? And then
Exactly.
dance might be defined differently. Maybe some schools, it's more technical driven, right?
Yeah.
Maybe some others might be more social impact driven.
Yeah.
Some other places might have a more expanded notion of what dance could be. While for example, at Duke, it's very much thinking about dance as a way of knowing, as a way of
Hmm.
knowing the world. So all
Hmm.
our students, they can take classes not having to major in, or minor in dance, right? So we
Yeah.
serve students all over the campus, and I think this is really beautiful that dance becomes a way for them to get to know their body, right, as a very intelligent part of our existence that
Hmm.
oftentimes we don't think about, we don't um, we forget we have this
Yeah.
entire intelligence within us,
Yeah.
day in, day out, right? So it's like centering our knowing on the body, and through that, getting to know each other, getting to know social relations, memories.
Hmm.
So that's something I really appreciate here. And I think also, I think I have changed right throughout this journey so much.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think there are so many artists, mentors who have played a big role in making these shifts. And one of the artists who I felt very indebted to is Wen Hui, who I'm also writing about her work right now. She is an independent Chinese choreographer and filmmaker, and who really taught me to think about our body as a reservoir of memories in a very
Mm.
tangible way, not just theoretical way, but really witnessing
Yeah.
how this can be done, right, in a theatrical work and how, what this means. So she was trained at Beijing Dance Academy, um, did the first class of the choreography program when the choreography major was restated in 1985. And then
Okay.
she came to the US for a trip and went back to China and established the very first independent dance company in China.
Oh,
That was in
wow.
1992. It's called Living
Okay.
Dance Studio. And so even until now, right, she always talks about she has to constantly letting go of all the techniques so she can
Mm.
allow her body to fully represent the experience and the memories that it's experiencing.
Yeah.
So sometimes, technique is one way, but then also the untraining your body is another technique in its own, right? How can we be so fully authentic to tap
Mm.
into what has been stored on us, right? Even sometimes generations, right? We
Yeah.
know traumas is inscribed in our body and passed down by generations.
Yeah.
Memories also, right? So for example, she talks about hunger, right? During
Mm.
she went through the time of hunger growing up, and then now her body remembers it, so she always
Yeah.
carries snacks with her. Right? So those
Right.
stories, they're not
Right.
accidental. It's in our everyday experiences. Yeah,
100%.
that feel
Huh.
like that allows me to think about who are the dancers, right? Everyone is a dancer. Everyone like dance is a way of being, is a way of moving, is a way of being in relation to one another. It's a way of um, tapping into our authentic self, right?
Yeah.
So, dancing in a way, it's really just it's a form of bringing out the presence at the moment. Sometimes it's just as simple as that, right?
Yeah.
In how can we use dance as a space and a opportunity for us to practice being, right?
Mm.
That's just give me a new understanding of what dance could do.
I
Yeah.
love that. I love that. Um, when you did go to UCLA, tell me more about that experience.
Yeah, so when I was there, I started the program even before the doctorate study. I did a UCLA film school. There was a summer intensive program. So I felt
Okay.
during that program, I got to learn a lot of techniques on
Oh,
filmmaking.
cool.
And
Yeah.
then when I was there, I just kept on making work. I made quite a few dance films, and then I was started to be asked to film for other choreographers' work, and then
Oh,
more
cool.
collaborations, and then gradually expand on making documentary film. So I was able to try different genres of filmmaking and keep expanding that area of inquiry. And at the same time, I was writing about screen dance in post-socialist China. So that became my dissertation project.
Wow. Oh
Yeah.
my
So,
gosh.
yeah. So I really loved how practice and research can actually go hand in hand.
Yeah.
Right? Sometimes we try to figure out how do we balance the two.
Mm.
Really think about the ideal way is they can inform each other. Right? So I feel
Mm.
by studying other people's work, it inspire me and give me new ideas of
Mm.
thinking about different techniques, tools, and also the reason behind and how it's in conversation with social, political, and cultural phenomena at the time, right?
Yeah.
And it's a form of historiography. I think technique itself is, right? And then yeah, and then making works also give me a perspective about the artists I'm writing about, right? I feel
Right.
like I can step
Right.
closer into their shoes to think about, oh, these are what you're thinking when you're
Uh,
creating. So I'm enjoying this symbiotic
yeah.
relationship.
I
Yeah.
love it. So I know one of the films that you made, and again, it was this really lovely, oh, we have another connection. And we'll get to what that connection is. But this is when you made a feature documentary, Mama Dancers. How did that come to be? Sorry, that's not a thumbs down. How did that come to be? When did you do it? Tell us more about the documentary
Yeah.
itself.
So that film actually had a seed planted a long time before we even started filming this work.
Okay.
So back in 2018, when I was doing research on Chinese screen dancing, I went back to Hong Kong, and I think I had a film screened at Hong Kong Jumping Frames International Video Dance Festival there. And I had a friend who was working at Beijing Dance Academy. She is also a mother and a dancer, so she
Okay.
came with me for the festival. And when we were in Hong Kong, we were talking about, oh, we're both mothers and dancers. We should make a film about mothers for dancers.
Okay. Yeah.
And this very specific identity, right? And you are having this two world emerging. And I
Yeah.
think mothers also interact with children differently. And I love the playfulness of oftentimes I see mothers who are dancers, they dance with their children, right? Which I
Yeah.
did when I was my
Yeah.
kids were little. So I'm curious about this dimension and also, of course, the very specific challenges,
Hmm.
and also very culturally specific too.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we talk about the stream, and then in 2022, her name is Xiaojiao, also goes by Yang Tao. She came to the United States for exchange program at USC, and I lived in LA at the time, so I said, let's do it. Let's
Okay.
film. So I contacted some friends I knew who are dancers, and they have children. And then we also reached out to people asking for recommendations. So we gathered a profile of dancers who
Hmm.
represent different dance forms, different cultural backgrounds. Some are international, some were born and raised here, also represent different gender, sexuality, and also race, right? And
Huh.
then yeah, so we selected six to be in this film, and we went around and filmed
Hmm.
like their experiences as a mother. In one dancer, Lauren Cox, was pregnant at the time, 8 months pregnant. It's really
Okay.
precious to
Huh.
see her just with all this hope and dreams
Yeah.
as a mother, and each one has very specific stories. The dancer from South Korea originally, Da Eun-jung. So she is one of the dancers in the Oscar hip hop, K-pop Demon Hunter, and that
Okay.
she was actually one of the few
Yeah.
dancers on stage. And
Okay.
yeah, so she used to dance for a national dance company in Korea, and she talked about the memory of once you got married, you need to start
Hmm.
have your exit plan
Yeah.
because once you get married, your next step is being pregnant, having
Yeah.
children, and
Yeah.
you cannot in the
Yeah.
company at the time, right? Yeah, so everyone,
Hmm.
there's very unique stories. So
Yes.
yeah, it feels
Uh,
like yeah, and the initial step into this whole world, which I'm continuing to explore through my current works. Yeah,
Amazing. Amazing. Let's go ahead. We're going to take a final pause here.
awesome.
Welcome back to Heartistry. We've been having a really wonderful conversation today with Jingqiu Guan. And, I really want to make sure we don't end this amazing conversation. There's so many aspects of what you've shared that I'm loving, and we could go deeper in. But I would love to. So, we talked about how we got connected. And specifically, yes, it was through Amarian. And what I think she saw as the point of connection was, as you did mention briefly, the work that you have done around migration and the train specifically, and seeing some parallels, or at least a reason for us to meet and talk. Hence, we have um, the work that I do through Gaptak, through the dance form that I practice and perform. And that's really exploring also the train through the lens of the 1947 partition, where it's resulted, of course, in India being split into India, and at that time, East and West Pakistan, East Pakistan eventually becoming Bangladesh. But I would love to hear more about how this idea came to you to, through your respective artistic mediums, to look at this more. Yes, give us context, history, and your approach to it.
Absolutely. I loved how train was the connecting point for us, right? Because train itself, it is a site of connection, right?
Yeah,
Trains connects people from one point to the other. And train is, whether it's in literature, in films, it's often becoming this narrative device and this site where encounters of people happen, right? And
yeah,
oftentimes when you have a train ride, you're stuck in a particular space, right?
yeah,
And within that, within the train card, you have different encounters unexpectedly, oftentimes, right? And there's often stories,
yeah,
shapes through that. But then also at the same time, train is so much connected to migratory stories. When we think about early Chinese immigrant who came to the US to build a transcontinental railroad,
yeah,
um, a lot of enslaved labor, right? So train is tied to labor, whether it's migratory labor or enslaved labor. So it's kind of this side of politics, right?
yeah,
Indicate whose labor has been exploited and where is the hierarchy. And of course, it's also like thinking about internment camps, right?
yeah,
At the time, train was used to ship people, right? Bring people
yeah.
from one place to another. Um, yeah, so it's a very, very rich site to tell stories. And because of my interest in Asian immigrant stories in the US, that diasporic experience, so Tran right away became this very rich metaphor and also
Yeah.
material site to imagine and retell the histories. But then on top of that, I realized my family's history was deeply
Mm,
embedded in the history of train. And a lot of those stories I did not know until recent years because growing up, we don't talk about family history very much for
yeah.
some reason. Maybe because there were a lot of trauma, maybe, um, yeah, just as a child, maybe I wasn't as curious as until later
Mm,
on, whereas I never also directly asked so many questions about the past. And later I learned my great grandfather
mhm.
was a train conductor.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, and that was like
God, the irony
19, maybe
considering. Yeah.
1920s in
Wow.
China. And then my grandparents, both sides, they worked on the train for different types of job. And then my parents, all of also both of them worked for railway company, different
Oh,
jobs.
wow.
So I realized, oh my God, my family history,
It's
train
it.
is a big part of it. I grew up in my elementary school is, it's like a railroad number two elementary school, something like that, if I
Yeah.
translate in English, right? So, but I
Huh.
didn't realize how deeply connected to that. And all the memories of train rides growing up, right, until much later taking my first airplane, but mostly it's through train. So I feel it's something that not just carries my own family history forward, right? Even though I'm not working on the train, but I can work on a project about the train, but then
Yeah,
also really tapping into the immigrant history, which echoes so much to what's going on today, right? Because I feel
totally.
um, it's time for us to revisit the history in different ways to bring dialogue, right? And I think
Yeah.
dance theater, film, all kinds of arts, right? They became this site to ask questions and
Yeah.
to bring opportunity to gather people together, to have dialogues that often might be difficult to have. So that's kind of inspired this project. Yeah.
Mm, I love it. And and it it's just so interesting because the train can be both a metaphor
Mhm.
and again, there are literal stories, historical fact of, so much again of what you've already touched on. And again, in India, Pakistan, Bangladesh at that time, like the train, of course, was used to transport people in this now, across these newly formed borders. And these stories that I had researched through an archive of the stories of the 1947 partition, as well as even anecdotally stories that I heard from people whose parents and or grandparents had gone through certain things related to the train. I mean, there's stories of violence, of, people being killed, people like you couldn't even stop at the train station because if you were going in one direction and therefore you were identifiable as one religion, the opposite side would be there waiting at the train station and just often
Mhm.
slaughter everybody on it. So then they were stopping in between for people to get off and use the bathroom and things like that. But then if a mob was coming, they would just quickly have to get back on the, moving the train, and people were left behind.
Mm.
So there was just the way, and even there's this one story, the way that it plays into a piece that I do on the train, and I just always think it's so profound. And it's really, even if you survived, you arrive at this new destination, and the narrative is very much we arrived at our destination. And the way we enact it is almost like we're just numb, we're just zombies, because what you've just witnessed, what and who you had to leave behind in a hasty manner to quickly flee. Um, and now to also have to start anew. Like all phases of it is wrapped in this sort of container of being moved. And yeah, I just think it's so profound, so many of these stories, and the way that you have touched on them and the ones that I've attempted to convey. I mean, it's a really powerful mechanism that, like you said, can be told and shared in so many ways. And I think is very relatable
Mhm.
to people of past and present.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I look forward to, watching your work develop. Hopefully, I know you and I are, in conversation about the hope to possibly come together somehow to share our respective mediums through this medium of the train and our art.
It will
But
happen.
yes, yes, exactly. But it is just, I'm really just so glad again that we've been connected, that you've, so generously shared your stories of, from childhood to present. And I just think it's such an inspiration to, definitely to me and to our listeners, to really hear of somebody who just really followed their heart's calling. And now, as an educator and still very much an art maker, how you are continuing to inspire, not just through your personal history, but, your present day and future evolution. It's really something to marvel at.
Thank you so much. I just feel follow the heart, right? I think
Yeah.
sometimes we rationalize it so much, which is fantastic. It's important to rationalize, but then also it's so important to stay quiet and listen to our heart's calling. I feel like oftentimes we forget to do that often enough. Yeah,
Yeah.
and I'm really so grateful for this opportunity.
Yeah.
And as you're talking, I just had this image in my head of us jumping on the same train cart and we're taking this ride together.
Ah,
And so
I
this
love
feels
it.
like we're still on this train together. And
There
I'm
you
excited to
go.
see where we're heading together towards. Yeah.
Beautiful. You couldn't have ended that on a better note. And the only last thing I will say is thank you so, so much for your time today on Heartistry.
Thank you so much.